Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
While he was cultivating, Nintian naturally felt Shiro's occasional gazes on him as he kept a small smile on his face, timing it a few times where he would open his eyes just as she glanced towards him. Nintian would chuckle when Shiro would quickly avert her gaze back to her phone. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to turn around so that his face wasn't distracting her. Amen. Hearing a soft groan beside her, Shiro glanced towards Yuki and saw that she was waking up. "You're finally awake," Shiro said with a small smile. Where am I? And is that you, Shiro?" Yuki asked as she brought her hand to her head. Helping her sit up, Shiro started to explain what happened during the past week. Duan Haning is dead." Yuki raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Yup. Anyways, what happened in there?" Shiro asked with concern. Furrowing her brows, Yuki eventually shook her head. "Honestly, I don't know. I remember trying to delay my level gain as much as I could after calling you so that I could extend the time I'm still alive. But that only pissed Duan Haning off, so he brought me to a place filled to the brim with mana. After I was thrown in there, I was forced to keep cultivating, and that's all I know. What even happened to me?" Yuki asked while glancing up at Shiro. Just as she did this, she saw a man that had just finished putting on his mask and wasn't able to catch a glimpse of his face. "Keiko managed to discover you while you were being used as fuel to power the dungeon. Honestly, I don't want to think about what would happen if we were a step late." Shiro sighed. "I see. To be honest, this is quite a bit of information to take in after just waking up." Yuki chuckled as Shiro could understand her reaction. After all, it was basically the same situation for her. "Don't worry about it too much. Just know that our main threat is gone for now." Amen. By the way, have you gotten your memories back yet?" Yuki asked as Shiro nodded her head. "I have, and all I can say is it's been quite unbelievable." Shiro chuckled. "How so?" "Let's just say I was reborn as a monster. Right now, I'm the queen of the spirits," Shiro admitted as Yuki paused. Seemingly trying to process this information in her mind, she tilted her head and smiled. "I think I'm still dreaming." "Unfortunately, you're not. I have indeed died, and this is my second life. I was reborn as a snow girl, you know. And let's just say my name, White Shiro, isn't exactly the most imaginative name for a snow girl. However, I have accepted this identity even though I remember my life as Kuromi." Shiro shook her head. "No, epsilon. Heis asterisk. At least you're back for good now. With Duan Haning dead, there's a lot of worries just off my chest now. Though, we should probably be worried about his associates since his EXP farm allowed them to get a few easy levels too. Ending this supply would only piss them off." Yuki warned. "Don't worry about it. I got it covered. Plus, now that my main threat has been dealt with, I can increase my strength without worry." Shiro grinned. "Amen. So just out of curiosity, who's this person behind you? Mind introducing me?" Yuki asked with a smile. "Sure. He's Nintian, the little beggar I mentioned before. You know, the one that I hung out with as a kid." You found him again?" Yuki raised her eyebrows in surprise. With the world being this big, finding a specific person was quite hard, especially considering the fact that they were an unknown beggar before. "Well, I didn't find him. Rather, he found me first," Shiro replied while glancing back at Nintian. Noticing that he had his mask on again, Shiro couldn't help but tilt her head before shrugging it off. If he didn't want to show Yuki his face, then she wouldn't force him. "So what's your plan now, Yuki?" Shiro asked. She could still remember that her initial goal was to develop a faction so powerful that it could contend with the 5 main factions. However, this plan was ground to a halt after the incident with Duan Haning. "I think I'll go back to the faction. Remember the promise we made when we became adventurers? I'll keep trying to aim for that." Yuki smiled. "Okay, in that case, then get some rest. I'll make you some food." Shiro nodded and left the room with Nintian. Walking to the kitchen, Shiro made herself a hairband and tied her hair into a ponytail while making a clip for her fringe. Creating an apron along with a kitchen knife, Shiro started to look through the cupboards for some ingredients. As it's been a while since she had last seen Yuki, Shiro decided to make her a meal that they had when they just started out as adventuring buddies. Looking at her new hairstyle and apron, Nintian raised his eyebrows in surprise as it made her seem like a housewife. "Emin? What?" Is there something on my face? Shiro asked while typing her apron. Nothing, just surprised. Anyways, if you don't mind me asking, what's the promise you made with Yuki? I'm quite curious. Nintion asked. Well, it ain't no secret, so sure. Basically, when we started out as adventurers, we made two promises. First was for me to become the best mage in the world so that my parents can't complain about me choosing a different path. Second was for Yuki to create a faction to contend with the 5 strongest factions. That way, we can support each other. Me with individual prowess while she helped me with resources and such. Shiro replied with a shrug. Quite a big promise, huh? Though I can definitely say that you're one of the most powerful people in the world right now. Nintion chuckled. Yeah, right. A random level 500 can just walk up to me and sneeze to kill me in one hit. Shiro rolled her eyes. But that's the same with everyone lower than a class. However, what they don't have is your access to your plethora of skills that basically make you unkillable. Tell me a person that has more health regenerating skills than you do? Ones that can recover you to maximum health with a single cast. To make matters worse, you have multiple casts. Well, I suppose that's also true. Shiro admitted since her gray skill was the literal definition of bullsh*t. Sorry, you killed me once now, did you? After intense combat, HM? What? The backlash of your skills are activating? Then you'll need to kill me another 20 times before your backlash hits, or else you'll be killed, you know. Anyways, scoot off to the side. I need to focus on cooking since I haven't done it in a while. Shiro waved her hand before focusing on the stove. Maybe you can spare me a plate? I'd be quite interested to taste your cooking. Nintion asked with a smile. Sure, I'll make sure to mix some rat poison into your plate while I'm at it. Shiro giggled softly. Cough. At least give me poison mint for humans if you're gonna try to kill me. We'll see. Shiro smiled as she started to cook. My, isn't this a harmonious aura, wouldn't you say so, Azul? Nimu's voice rang out. Yup. Azul nodded her head as it was rare for Shiro to be this peaceful. Boy, at least let me focus on cooking, okay? We'll see. Nimue grinned as she imitated Shiro's tone. Blushing from a bit of embarrassment, Shiro glared at Nimue before shaking her head and focused back on the task at hand. PFT, what a maiden. Nimue laughed. Aren't you one as well, though? If I remember correctly, you never got a boyfriend, did you? Azul tilted her head. Pot calling the kettle black. Shiro scoffed. You of all people are the least qualified to say that line. Nimue rolled her eyes. Yeah, people. This empress is a monster now, so it doesn't apply to me. Shiro grinned. She's technically right, you know. Azul shrugged. Whatever, and just for your information, I did get a boyfriend, okay? Nimue pouted. Having one for 2 days doesn't count. Azul shook her head since she could still remember what had happened. As the two spirits were reminiscing about their past, Shiro couldn't help but smile at the current situation. I suppose it's nice to have a break now and again. Shiro thought to herself as she noticed that her mood seemed to be considerably better than what it used to be. Savoring this feeling while it lasted, Shiro eventually finished the dish and gave it to Yuki. Naturally, she didn't forget about Nintion and decided to cook his portion too. After attending to Yuki, the rest of the patients started to wake up. Seeing this, Shiro decided that she might as well cook for them too since she's already got the tools out. For the first time in a long while, she spent the rest of the day without any combat-related thoughts. After cooking for Yuki and the other patients, Shiro had a proper medic examine them. Hearing that they were completely healthy now, Shiro let them do whatever they wanted while she prepared to make her way to the east of China. Yuki stayed around for a little while before deciding to make her way back to the Winter's Grace main headquarters so that she could reorganize the faction a little. After all, she has been away for quite a while and was not able to run the faction how she wanted to. Sending small letters and secret phone calls was not optimal. Watching Yuki leave, Shiro had a small smile on her face since Yuki was now getting her life back on track after Duan Haning **********. Do you want to make your way to the east now? Thankfully, there's a teleport shrine in the city, so we can get there immediately. Nintion asked with a smile. Sure, I guess it'll be just me and you for a bit then. Shiro shrugged. Of course, that was excluding the spirits that were following her, Estrella, Nimue, Azul, and Atesh. With Keiko and Kiyomi making their way to the front lines to get some levels, their current group had thinned out a little. I see. Perhaps you could call this a date, he said with a smile and removed his mask. You wish. Unfortunately for you, I have a few permanent tenants with me. Shiro grinned before summoning Nimue, Izul, and Addy. You know, if you're gonna summon me, at least tell me. I was about to rest, you know. Nimue sighed. Fine, fine, you can go back then. Shiro chuckled and let Nimue back in the Manhwa realm. What about you, Izul? I'll stay out here. She smiled as she enjoyed staying out in the world. It was soothing in the way that it made her feel free. Amen. Nodding her head, they started to make their way out of the village as Shiro held Addy in her arms. Seeing Addy glance towards his face curiously, Nantion gave him a small wave, to which he only looked the other way in boredom. PFT, seems like Addy doesn't like you. Shiro laughed as Nantion could only smile tiredly. I guess that's a sign that I'm not too good with children. He sighed. Too bad for you then, huh? I already have 3. Shiro chuckled. Well, I don't exactly mind. Rolling her eyes, Shiro sped up ahead of him as she started to walk towards the closest teleport shrine. Shaking his head, Nantion followed behind her. ####. Arriving in the city of Xiaoman, the duo made their way to the last known location of the monster. Surprisingly, when they arrived, there were already a few people searching around the place for clues. Emin, why are there so many people here? Shiro asked as she turned to Nantion. I'm not too sure. Let me ask the member we had dispatched to this city. He replied as he brought out his phone. At this point, he had already placed his mask back on his face. RAOE. After a short while, a woman arrived at the scene with a rather curious guest. Branchmaster, the two said at the same time. I didn't realize that you were visiting this place, Huan Air. How goes your training? Nantion asked as the second woman was Huan Air, the one that Shiro would like to call a second-rate hacker girl. It's going fine, Branchmaster. It seems like you're with Miss Shiro today. Huan Air bowed slightly before glancing towards Shiro. Feeling Huan Air's gaze on her, Shiro grabbed Addy's hand and gave her a small wave. MN, so what brings you to this city? I thought you would have been training with the elder down south. Nantion questioned curiously. I'm here for the mission. Master has told me to practice my puppeteering on this monster and see if I can bring it under my control. If I'm able to do that, I'll be able to proceed to the next step of my training. Huan Air replied. I see. That's quite unfortunate since we're here to kill that monster too. Hearing that they were also here to kill the monster, Huan Air had some hope that she could show off her potential to Nantion, but stopped when she realized that Shiro was around. Seeing the child in her arms, she couldn't help but wonder who he is. Seeing how affectionate Shiro was being with it, she could guess that it was a child of a good friend that she's looking after. Plus, there was no way that it was going to be her child as she was still. Thinking up of this point, Huan Air finally realized that Shiro seemed to look a bit older than the last time she had seen her. Previously, she looked about 13, but now she seemed to be around 18 to 20 years old. If you're curious about Addy, then I can tell you that he's my son. Shiro smiled. Since Huan Air liked Nantion and Nantion liked her, if Huan Air found out that she had a son, she would be quite annoyed, no? Plus, Shiro was in a good mood, so she decided to mess around with Huan Air a bit. Widening her eyes, Huan Air glanced at Shiro in surprise. How the F***CK is that child hers? Wasn't her body that of a kid before? She thought with confusion. You know, you saying that Addy is your son is quite confusing to a few people. After all, your previous form was rather young, wouldn't you say? Nantion chuckled. What? Adopted son is still my son. We're a package, okay? Get me and you get Addy with Ian and Lisa. If they don't like you, then you don't get me. Shiro rolled her eyes as she decided to joke around. Oh, does that mean you're entertaining the idea of being with me? Nantion smiled. Cough. Just a joke, just a joke. Shiro glanced away with a small blush as she couldn't help but think back to what Nimue said about the Freudian slip. Damn it. Nimue, you're making me overthink stuff now. Shiro pouted in her mind as Nimue sat in her mana realm, confused as to why she was suddenly blamed. But I didn't say anything just now. Nimue replied in confusion. While this was happening, Huan Air couldn't help but feel a little awkward seeing the aura around the two. Feeling a little jealous, she glanced towards her friend by the side who seemed to have been forgotten by the branch master. Anyways, enough about that. What about the monster? Didn't you ask her to come so we can find out more about the monster? Shiro changed the subject quickly since she didn't want to dwell on those thoughts about the Freudian slip. Right. If I remember correctly, your name was Kai Shio, right? Nantian nodded as he took a step back in his advances. After all, if she didn't want to stay on the topic, he wouldn't force her to. He was happy enough to know that she was considering the thought. Indeed. Kai Shio replied with a nod. Are you able to tell us what happened here and why there are so many people gathered? He asked. Of course. For you see, earlier this morning, they had discovered a sudden spike in mana. The monster in question was rumored to have mutated. In addition to this, there was a severe increase in casualties, so they're putting a priority mark on this monster. There were rumors to say that even a few level 200s were killed with ease. Kai Shio replied respectfully. I see. I suppose if you're able to control this monster, then it would be a great asset for you. How about this? We'll have a small competition. It'll be a match between Hwan Air and Shiro. For Shiro to win, she'll need to kill this beast before you can control it, and vice versa. I will not be providing any form of assistance during this, Nantian suggested with a smile. He knew that Shiro wanted to exercise after waking up, so a competition should be right up her alley. Oh, that sounds pretty interesting. However, how would Hwan Air win if I accidentally land the final blow just as she controls it? Shiro raised her eyebrow. Don't worry about that. I'll keep it alive if Hwan Air controls it first. Nantian chuckled. Fair enough. Shiro nodded before glancing towards Hwan Air. Let's have a bit of fun then, shall we? She smiled as there was a small sadistic hint in her eyes. Seeing this, Nantian knew that Hwan Air was going to have a bad time, but decided to ignore it as Shiro was the one he cared about. To make the competition fair, both of you will receive the same information about the last known location of the monster, okay? Nantian suggested with a smile as Shiro nodded her head. Sure, though I doubt it'll do me any good since you know the effects I have on monsters. Shiro chuckled. Smiling at her statement, Nantian knew that the monster would probably try to stay as far away from Shiro as possible. However, seeing her confident gaze, he knew that she had her own plans, so he didn't worry about it. Confused as to what they were talking about, Hwan Air only ignored it while Kai Shio shared the information. From the intel that she had gathered, the last known location of the monster was towards the north of this city. There, it was seen attacking a few adventurers when they stopped it from approaching another village. Showing the two a brief clip of the monster attack, Kai Shio waited patiently. Looking at the image of the monster, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrows after seeing its appearance. Its size was huge as it resembled a giant lizard man, only mixed with nightmare fuel. With protruding teeth coming from parts of his body, this monster also had an additional set of arms coming from his back. Instead of hands at the end of these arms, there were lobster claws instead with sharp spines on the sides. In addition to this, she could also see a split from his jaw to his stomach, which could be opened to reveal more teeth and spiked tentacles that seemed to latch onto its prey. The hell is this thing even called? Shiro asked as she furrowed her brows from disgust. According to the adventurers that came into contact with it, it was apparently called the Vicara. There aren't any records about it, so we can assume that it's a mutated monster. Kai Shio replied as Shiro nodded. Got it. It's probably quite easy to spot this thing since it's huge. Shiro chuckled. Not quite. There are reports that it can go invisible and disguise the sounds that it emits to make it seem much further than expected. What may sound like 5 miles away may just be a few meters from you. Naturally, it uses this to escape any attempts at its life. Kai Shio warned since this had caught quite a few people off guard when they tried to hunt this monster down. If that's everything, are the both of you ready? Nantian said with a smile. Yup. Both Shiro and Hwan Air nodded at the same time. Then the competition begins now. Just as he said this, Hwan Air dashed towards the north of the city as quickly as she could. On the other hand, Shiro was just strolling at a leisurely pace. Since her aura could scare off the monster, she wasn't in a rush to find it. Letting Addie back into her mana realm, Shiro flew into the air and started to climb higher. Once she was satisfied by how high she was, she created a sniper, making sure that the scope was designed to detect anything that was in stealth along with detecting fluctuations of mana. Shiro waited patiently. Not gonna lie, this seems a little unfair, no? Nimue raised her eyebrows. Not quite. I mean, the monster would just run away from me, so I'm merely observing from a distance until I see it appear. Once I do, I'll shoot a bullet crafted from my astral rift attunement. Remember how I told you that I could create a portal with this technique I made in the trial when I was with Kuromi? I'm going to use that to close the gap. Shiro replied with a smile. So basically you're going to sit back and wait for other people to do the hard work for you? And once they find the monster, you're just going to swoop in and take it. You make it sound so bad when you put it like that. Shiro chuckled. That's because it is. Heis, forget it. I'll just pray that you don't drive this one air chick crazy. Nimue rolled her eyes. Oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine, Shiro grinned. Focusing her attention back on the task at hand, Shiro managed to spot Hwan Air in the outskirts of the forest. Waving her hand, a few mana wires came out of her fingertips as they latched onto a few birds in the sky. Understanding that Hwan Air was using birds to scout out the situation, Shiro ignored her and looked for the monster through her scope. Unfortunately, it seems like luck was not on her side since the monster refused to reveal itself. There were no signs of stealth being used, nor were there any traces of the monster. It was almost as if it had just decided to give up on hunting today. Oh yes. Furrowing her brows, Shiro decided to create a drone that can search for her without alerting the monster. Not only that, but it could also search the underground just in case the monster escapes to a cavern or something. Sending out the drones, Shiro made herself a bed in the air and yawned slightly. Man, I wanted some exercise, but this is just annoying. The monster won't even show itself. Shiro pouted slightly in annoyance. I would be too if you were coming after my life. Nantian chuckled while flying next to her. Due to their current altitude, they were quite hard to spot from the ground. UWH. Damn, where the hell did you come from? Shiro asked as she was slightly surprised by his arrival. From the ground. He raised his eyebrows. No *T Sherlock. Let me change my question then. Why did you come up here? I thought you weren't allowed to interfere. Shiro asked once more. I'm not interfering. I'm just talking to you. So I'm guessing from your tone that this monster is avoiding you. He asked as Shiro shuffled over slightly so he could sit down on the bed. Yeah, my race and class is quite annoying when anything I want to kill just automatically avoids me like a plague. Shiro replied. Well, in some cases, this might be good. True, but unfortunately, this ain't one of them. Shiro shrugged. Do you still think you'll be able to win when the monster appears? He asked curiously. Oh, definitely. It's like whack-a-mole. Once this idiot appears, I'll be able to get him straight away. Shiro chuckled while patting her sniper. But I thought you wanted to test out your blade? Why a sniper? It's transport. I shoot out a bullet that allows me to teleport into close range and surprise the monster. Shiro grinned. Since the monster could sense her presence, it would run away the moment it sensed her. Therefore, this was the perfect tool to close the gap. I see. Honestly, if I was an enemy and I knew that the sniper did, I'd be more afraid of you than the bullet. At least I might survive with the bullet. Nantian chuckled. Are you underestimating the power of my guns? Shiro raised her eyebrow while glancing towards him. Not really. It's just that you're much scarier than a bullet. Nantian replied with a shrug. Just as Shiro was about to reply, her drones reported back that it had discovered the monster lurking underground. Right now, its size had grown exponentially, and it was slowly making its way towards the sea in order to escape. Seems like you found your target. Nantian smiled as Shiro nodded her head. In that case, then I won't bother you any longer. Nantian chuckled and stood up. Oh right, are you sure it's okay for me to take this monster? Wouldn't the sect want Hwan Air to control it? Shiro asked. Don't worry about it. With your contributions in the last battle, most of the elders don't care if a monster or two was taken out by you. Wait, most? Does that mean there are a few who aren't so happy with my help? Shiro raised her eyebrow. I won't beat around the bush. Yes, there are. But I'm dealing with them right now since they were just annoyed about the fact that I used a Tier 7 artifact without consulting with them. Nantian smiled before flickering away from his spot. Furrowing her brows, Shiro wondered if she should pay them a visit as well after she dealt with the Shadow Temple. After all, he did use a precious item in order to help her out. I'll ask him about them later. For now, though, I got an annoying monster to deal with. Aiming her sniper towards where the monster was currently, Shiro narrowed her eyes and fired a shot. Asterisk bang. Watching the black bullet fly through the air, Shiro dismantled her sniper and summoned her new and improved Athra. Thinking about it for a moment, she decided to follow it up with a few buffs to make it so that she could kill the monster in one hit. Activating her celestial raiment, she chose the lightning element so that it could amplify her Takamikazuchi technique. Smiling softly, Shiro narrowed her eyes and prepared to teleport to her bullet. Now, activating the portal, Shiro's body disappeared from her spot and reappeared just above the monster's location. With sadistic intent glimmering in her eyes, Shiro slammed her hand down and activated her tectonic quake attunement. Asterisk rumble. Suddenly, the ground split apart as large pillars of earth slammed against the monster, pushing it up into the air. Looking at the monster known as Vicara up close, Shiro couldn't help but notice how disgusting it was. Sorry, I'm doing everyone a favor by killing you because goodness, you are ugly as F***ck. Shiro grinned and swiped with her sword. Activating her Takamikazuchi technique, lightning flickered off her body as her sword lacerated deeply into the monster's body. Funneling mana into her sword, nanobots surged into the monster's body and started to consume his internal organs. Asterisk Yura. Crying out in pain, the Vicara started to thrash its body around in pain. However, as it was currently being launched through the air, it wasn't able to do much in its defense. Snapping her fingers, the nanobots started to eat the joints at the base of all of his limbs. Looking at the now crippled monster, Shiro narrowed her eyes and decided to finish it off with force of elements. Mixing the mystery element into the mix, the sword started to glitch out. Now I'm not sure how this would work, so why don't you be my little test subject? Shiro asked with an evil smile. Sitting on a tree branch, Shiro crossed her legs and controlled the sword to stab into the monster's chest. Immediately upon impact, a circuit-like pattern started to spread out from the viscera's chest. This time, unable to scream, the Vicara could only watch in horror as his body slowly crumbled away. OS. While she watched this happen, Shiro could somewhat feel a tugging sensation in her mind, as if it was trying to extract the code but stopped because she didn't use the extraction skill. Oh, seems like using the mystery element in a skill has the same effect, only weakened. Maybe I've damaged their main code rather than extracting it completely. Shiro muttered in curiosity. Shaking her head, she canceled out her celestial raiment and hopped down from the tree. Looking for anything she could use as proof for the kill, Shiro's smile twitched when she realized that since it was now ash, she could not collect anything. No loot or proof. *T. She thought to herself since she could have gotten a few items that might have helped her class up, though she wasn't sure. With an unknown class as her next target, she didn't even know how to start. If anything, she knew that she'd probably need to research a bit about other people's class up and see how and why they would experience such a phenomenon. Plus, it would be better for her to discover it herself rather than relying on the system. After all, the system had admitted not knowing what was going to happen, meaning it wasn't omniscient as many people believed it to be. While she was examining the ash, Nantian Kaishio and Hwanair soon arrived on the scene. Unfortunately, I've reduced the monster to ash. Shiro chuckled while glancing back at the trio. I figured as much. Did you at least get some decent exercise? Nantian asked with a smile. Somewhat. Since I took it by surprise, the fight was rather short and it didn't pose much of a threat. To be fair, if I wanted to get a decent fight, I would have let it attack me a bit, but honestly, from what I've seen before, it might just run away again. Shiro shrugged before dusting herself. Stretching her body, she yawned softly before bringing Addy back out of her mana realm and held him in her arms. Wait, what? Hwanair and Kaishio paused in surprise. They didn't expect her to suddenly pull her son out of thin air. Emin? What? Shiro tilted her head. Nothing much. They're probably wondering where you keep Addy. Nantian chuckled as Shiro was about to reply with inside me. However, immediately realizing that it sounded extremely wrong, she corrected it. I keep Addy in a separate dimension when I fight, so it doesn't affect him. She replied. Oh, I see. The duo nodded their heads since it made sense. However, they were rather surprised that Shiro had access to another dimension. While Hwanair understood that she was able to use the dimension to travel around, she didn't realize that it could be used to keep people safe. Anyways, since the monster had been dealt with, we'll be on our way now. Nantian smiled. Understood, branch master. Take care. Kaishio bowed while Huan Er hesitated for a moment. Eventually, she sighed and said the same. Initially, she wanted to ask if she could join them, but seeing as how he was with Shiro, he would most likely be annoyed by her presence. Nodding his head, Nantian glanced toward Shiro. Shall we go? He smiled. Amen. Walking away from the area, Shiro started to look through her inventory for the card that Sherry's had given her. Let's see. If I remember correctly, she told me to break this in the rift when I'm ready for business. Since it has something to do with Een, I'd rather her be with us while we're doing this. Shiro said while pulling out the card. If you want, I can get one of my subordinates to escort Een to where we'll be going. That way, we don't hinder the rest of the party from clearing dungeons. Nantian suggested. I don't see why not. Though I'll need to see what the woman says first. Shiro replied before putting her hand on Nantian's shoulder. Pulling the two of them into the rift, Shiro broke the card and watched patiently. As she broke the card, the pieces started to float in the air as a portal was formed. You really have an odd sense of timing, huh? I was just about to have a shower. Sherry's walked out with a twitching smile. Currently, she was wearing her pajamas and had a towel in her hands. Oh my, seems like you've even snagged yourself a man since the last time I've seen you. She raised her eyebrows after looking at Nantian. Enough with the chit-chat. Like you told me, I snapped this card when I'm ready for business. Where are we going exactly? Shiro asked since she wasn't too keen on talking with this woman. Fine. The faction master did tell me to take you to the faction once you're ready. Sherry shrugged. Before we go, tell me the location so that I can get Een to rendezvous with us. Sure, we're going to go to a country called Bali that was created after the system appeared. The faction master has moved to a different office after some of the members discovered a temple of sorts that had a relation to the faction's past. One that has ties with your daughter. As for the city, it's the city of Clawmore, and luckily for you, it does have a teleport shrine. Sherry smiled as Shiro nodded her head. Glancing towards Nantian, she didn't even need to ask when she saw that he was already typing away on his phone. I've already notified my subordinate to go pick up Een now. They should be in Clawmore by the time we arrive. Nantian said with a smile. Well, that makes things easier. All right, before we go, can you at least let me go for my shower? A woman's got priorities, okay? I'll give you another card and you get to break it in about an hour or so, okay? Sherry smiled. Okay. Taking the second card, Shiro decided to spend the next hour at a cafe where she got some snacks. Seeing that Shiro enjoyed eating the snacks from cafes quite a bit, Nantian made a mental note of it so that he could learn how to make them for the future. After an hour, Shiro broke the card once more and Sherry's appeared once again, but this time she was properly dressed. Right then, let's go to the city of Clawmore, shall we? Sherry smiled as the three of them made their way towards the teleport shrine. Arriving at the city, Shiro immediately noticed how different it was compared to other cities. Rather than a bright blue sky, there was a gloomy red sky in its place. Dark clouds loomed over ominously as the wind sounded like a dead man's scream, echoing in the distance. The buildings were crafted from a matte black material that had a texture similar to that of a person's bone. Each window was reinforced but still cracked under the strange atmosphere of this city. Welcome to Clawmore, aka the City of Decay. The only thing that doesn't decay in this city are bones and special material crafted from the monsters that reside around the city. Sherry smiled as Shiro raised her eyebrows. Charming place. Shiro shrugged. There are worse places than this, haha. For now, though, let's wait for Een since she should be arriving soon with my subordinate. Nantian smiled. Sure. Sherry's, is there a cafe or something nearby? A place where I can just eat for a bit? Shiro asked. Yeah, there is. Just follow me. Sherry's nodded her head and took them into the town. Taking a few turns into the alleys, which were quite suspicious, they eventually arrived at an inconspicuous store called Tora. Entering through the doors, Sherry's looked towards the man behind the counter with a grin. Claude, I'm here with a few customers for you. Sherry's called out with a smile. Emin, you're familiar with this place? Shiro asked curiously. Yup. You see, I needed to do a few errands in this city, and I happened to chance upon this store. The location's not that good and the owner runs it for a hobby, but the food and drinks here are great. Sherry's chuckled. Oh, you're back. I thought you were in a different country for a job. The man called Claude yawned lazily. He was a man that looked like he was in his late 20s, and he had long hair that was tied up into a low ponytail and a pair of black-rimmed glasses. Wearing a waiter's outfit that consisted of a black vest, white shirt, black pants, and a bow tie, he looked like a serious man despite his current lazy attitude. Looking up, he saw Shiro and Nantion and quickly sat up straight. Cracking his neck, he brought out a few menus before gesturing for the two of them to sit by one of the tables. "What can I get for you two?" he asked with a smile. "What about me? You're ignoring your friend here, you know." Sherry sighed as she leaned on the counter. "What kind of friend eats here every time for free? Your money grabber." Claude clicked his tongue. "Oh, but I do a few favors in return, though. Remember the geisha incident?" Sherry's grinned. "That was 2 years ago. Heist, just get the usual in the back. You can make it yourself since I'm serving these two." He sighed before doing a 180-degree shift in his aura. From lazy and tired to kind and warm, Claude turned towards the duo. "For a charming lady such as you, I recommend you the homemade lemon cake that is baked with care. And for a masked gentleman such as yourself, may I recommend you a cup of paradise? It's a drink unique to my store." He asked with a smile. "Oh my, lemon cake you say? I remember enjoying them quite a bit when I had them in other cities, so sure, I'll order a lemon cake. What do you take for payment in this store?" Shiro asked with a smile. "The payment is rather unique in the sense that it is only obtainable within this city. However, as you are first-time customers, I'll let you have the first meal for free." Claude replied. "Why, thank you. If you don't mind me asking, what is the payment? We might be staying here for a short while, so I may return with my daughter." Shiro inquired. "The payment is something called revenant essence that you can obtain when you kill one of the monsters unique to this city. Depending on the size of the monster, a different amount of revenant essence will be dropped. As you can guess, large monsters drop larger portions of revenant essence." Claude explained with a smile. "I see. Thank you for explaining." "My pleasure. So what will you have?" Claude asked as he brought out his notepad. "Since you recommended the lemon cake, I'll have that then. What about you, Lil Tion?" Shiro glanced over to Nantion. "Me? I'll have a vanilla cake then." Nantion replied, much to the surprise of Shiro, since she didn't expect him to order a cake. "What? Can a man eat some cake?" Nantion chuckled. "Oh no, don't get me wrong. I'm just surprised, that's all." Shiro shook her head. "Never took you for a cake person." She smiled. "Well, I wouldn't say that either. I'm just curious about why you enjoy eating snacks like this. I never really ate them." Nantion replied, since he only ate a proper meal with the exception of what Shiro gave him. "But yes, I like them because they're sweet, I guess. Just something that tastes nice. Before I got my sense of taste back, mana stones were the only thing that tasted like anything, and they were really sweet, so that might have been the cause." Shiro whispered over. "I see. Fair enough." Nantion nodded. Waiting for a short moment for the cake to arrive, the two soon saw Claude walking out of the kitchen with 2 slices of cake in hand. "A lemon cake for the lady and a vanilla cake for the gent. Please enjoy." Claude smiled as Shiro nodded. "If you don't mind, why don't we have a small chat while we wait? I'm rather curious about Miss Sherry's. How did you two meet?" Shiro asked. It's rather complicated. Let's just say she helped me and I helped her. Unfortunately, we kind of became friends after a few incidents together." Claude sighed. "What do you mean by kind of became friends? Aren't we basically best pals?" Sherry's grinned as she came out of the kitchen with a rather lavish portion of an assortment of snacks on her plate. "Right? Anyways, while you're here, I might as well warn you all about some recent news. There have been earthquakes and sudden downpour of red water, which looks like blood in recent times, and the cause is unknown. However, many believe it to be a bad omen, since even the monsters are becoming restless. I recommend that you finish your business soon before leaving this place. I'm not one to believe in omens and such, but when earthquakes and blood rain happen on a daily basis, even I'm considering the thought of leaving." Claude shrugged as she sat behind his counter once more. "Oh, when did this all start?" Sherry's raised her eyebrows, since she hadn't heard of any news regarding these strange phenomenon. "It started around a week ago. Not a lot of news was written about this since many just believe it to be something unique to this city. After all, where would you see a city under a special condition such as this one? Materials other than those obtained within this place will decay. Unless you had a self-repair option on your equipment, you'll soon lose them too. Claude yawned. True. I have lost a few good daggers to this bloody place as well. Sherry shrugged while eating her snacks. Hearing about these activities, Shiro was rather curious but decided not to investigate the matter unless it had something to do with Ian. Right now, she had quite a long list of things to do, and this was not one of them. Finishing the meal with Nantion, they talked for a little longer before receiving a message from his subordinates saying that Ian had arrived and was waiting at the teleport shrine. Once again, thank you for the meal. When I get the chance, I'll return. Shiro smiled as Claude nodded his head. I'll be back for dinner. Sherry smiled. I suppose I'm making food for two then. Claude sighed, but Shiro could tell that he didn't mind despite his attitude. Waving his hand lightly, he watched as the trio made their way out of the store and back towards the city. ####. Making their way back to the teleport shrine, Shiro saw Yin's familiar face and was about to call out to her. However, after seeing her appearance, she couldn't help but pause and say the following. What the F***CK? Looking at Ian, who seemed to have grown up all of a sudden, Shiro rubbed her eyes just to make sure she was seeing things right. If the previous Ian looked like a kid version of Shiro, the current one looked like a teen. Previously, her hair was completely black, but now, it held a dark purple tint. Mom, Ian called out with a smile. Ian, what happened to you? How did you get so big? Shiro tilted her head. I'll tell you that later. But for now, where are we going? Ian asked. We're going to the Shadow Temple. Apparently, they found something that might be related to you. Shiro replied as Ian nodded. Shadow Temple was the dungeon that you picked me up from, right? Yup. Shiro nodded. Now then, with everyone here, I shall take you to the faction building. The location is a little strange, but don't question it too much, okay? Sherry smiled. As they were following Sherry's, Shiro turned to Ian. So how's the party doing? They're doing much better than expected. After they got used to soloing dungeons, their thoughts in regard to how they used their skills had dramatically improved. If I were to say, their real level is around 180-ish if we're talking about combat potential and skill usage, though their actual level needs to catch up to their performance. Ian replied with a smile. I see. That's good. How's your sister then? I heard that different churches are pursuing her. Shiro smiled softly. Lyrica and the others have got that covered. Plus, the head priest that you met last time is actually helping her too. He's stopping the other churches from going over the line. Ian replied with a chuckle. So you want me to help too? Nantion asked as Shiro shook her head. Nah, if we keep giving them help, they'll never mature. Shiro replied. Oh right. Mom, where's Ani Keiko and Kiyomi? I thought they would be with you. Ian asked since she enjoyed spending time with Keiko. She would give her all the food she wanted. They're going to the front lines for a bit. Keiko wanted to get Kiyomi's level up since she's falling behind a bit. Oh, that's unfortunate. I wanted to go to a restaurant with them since it has been a while. Ian sighed as Shiro's smile twitched. She could still remember how she emptied out the entire pantry of one of the restaurants back when they were staying at the branch of Winter's Grace. If you want, never mind. I'll take you to a restaurant elsewhere since the currency in this place is rather unique. Shiro replied. Initially, she wanted to say that she'd take Ian to Tora since their cake was actually much nicer than what she had anticipated. However, if Ian were to realize how nice it tasted, she was afraid that she might empty out Claude's supplies. Okay. I'm quite curious as to what kind of food this place can offer though. It's not every day you see such a strange sky. Ian replied while glancing up. We'll see how it goes. If I can get some currency from this place, then we'll go for a small meal. Shiro nodded. Following Sherry's, they soon arrived in front of what seems to be a small wooden storage shack of sorts. Opening the door, Sherry's entered and gestured for the rest of them to enter as well. Furrowing her brows, Shiro shrugged and followed along. Once everyone was inside, Sherry's brought out a key card and swiped it against the light switch. Feeling a strange feeling wash over her, Shiro glanced towards Sherry's in suspicion. Empress, do not worry. It is nothing harmful, and you're just sliding through a few dimensions right now. We're currently moving deeper into the earth in terms of location-wise. Estrella called out as she was familiar with this feeling. I see. Thank you. Shiro nodded. After the fight, Shiro decided to allow Estrella to stay in her mana realm since it was easier to summon her should she need her assistance. However, Estrella seemed to have taken it as a form of punishment, so she decided to isolate herself on the Rift Island, making it so that she could only sit in silence until she is needed. Regardless, Shiro didn't try to persuade her in doing anything else. If she wanted to self-isolate, then Shiro would let her. After a few short moments where the strange sensation would constantly fluctuate, Sherry's eventually opened the door to reveal what seems to be a giant underground dig site of sorts. Looking around, Shiro could see large ruins being excavated as members of the Shadow Temple worked carefully around the statues that they managed to uncover. Glancing towards a few statues, Shiro paused in surprise when she recognized a few of them. The main one was naturally the statue of Fei Ling, who had taught her the phantom pathway back in the story quest. As for the second statue she recognized, it was the void beast that was by her side during that quest. Raising her eyebrows, she wondered why there were statues of them in this place. Oh, you can really see the resemblance, huh? Sherry's raised her eyebrows when she compared Een to the statue of Fei Ling. While Een did have parts of Shiro's features, the other half came from Fei Ling. Well, I suppose that confirms who's your other mum then. Shiro laughed as they started to walk through the excavation site. Going up a flight of stairs, Sherry's knocked on a door before entering. I didn't even say enter yet. Lucius sighed as he looked up to see Een, Shiro, and Nantian, who were following behind Sherry's. Well, I brought her here. As I said before, I better see my payment in my account, okay? Sherry's grinned. Yes, I know, don't worry. Now if you would be so kind as to leave us for now. Lucius nodded as Sherry's left the room. So what's this about? You never really explained to me about why you wanted me to come here with Een. Shiro asked while sitting down on a sofa with Een. Anyways, like I had said before, while going through some old texts, I managed to find a connection between the faction and your daughter over there. The main connection was that the faction was created to guard an artifact of sorts that was supposed to be passed on to the Dark Phoenix. To prevent anyone from getting the artifact easily, it was broken to pieces and only the Dark Phoenix blood and undo the seals on these pieces. We've already uncovered quite a few pieces, but it seems like there are still some missing. The site we're on right now is the 7th piece. According to the text, we got 3 more pieces left to go after this one. Lucius explained. So what's the artifact? Shiro asked curiously. We're not sure. There weren't any explicit answers on this, and all we know is that the Dark Phoenix must have it, and it was a must or else a calamity will befall this place. In addition to that, there are also some records about a kingdom in the past that has the same name as your daughter. Een. Lucius shrugged as Shiro's ears perked up. Een Kingdom? I know that one. Whatever happened to it? During the quest, she managed to turn the tides around and save the kingdom. However, she wasn't sure what kind of impact that had brought due to the fact that she had obtained Een. When she obtained Lysandra from her quest, everyone's knowledge of her was erased, and even the light B** star's daughter lost her body. Well, according to the text, the Een Kingdom managed to survive the initial onslaught of 4 kingdoms, but soon, things started to go downhill when the ruler succumbed to an unknown disease. Without a ruler, the Fire Queen rebelled and took everything for herself. The site we're on now is apparently the grave of the ruler that was created after she died. Her subordinates, Fei Ling and a monster known as the Void Beast, protected those that were still loyal to the original ruler. Their end was unknown. In addition to this, there were also signs that the grave was more than what it seemed. We've detected that there was a large clearing of space deep down, but we haven't been able to enter it yet. But I got something else to show you. During our time here, we managed to find a rather interesting mural that was carved on the outside of the grave. Lucius said as he brought out his laptop. Bringing up a picture, silence dominated the room as Shiro paused in shock. On the screen, there was a carving of a girl on a throne that was guarded by a woman and a beast. Naturally, Shiro recognized the girl in the picture to be what she looked like when she had first completed the quest. What the hell? Shiro muttered in confusion. The same reaction I had. I understand that the dungeon in New York had some connections with the faction's past, but I never expected for you to be engraved in our history. Lucius smiled as Shiro furrowed her brows. What do you know about that dungeon? She asked. What do I know? I know that each of the trials you can face inside the dungeon is something to boost your stats. Plus, it is also one that puts you in a special setting within the dungeon. What I don't understand is how or what you did in order to become the ruler of the past. Or rather, a different world. I did do some research, and it seems like similar things such as this is happening across the world. People doing story quests and had the records changed if their final results were earth-shattering. Lucius replied, "Oh, there were other cases such as this." Shiro narrowed her eyes in curiosity. Yes, one such example was when an entire country had disappeared after one of the ex-heroes had completed a story quest. The country was one that had been discovered after the system was integrated, and the disappearance of said country caused quite a few people to be erased from this world. After showing some proof through the things he owned, this phenomenon was recorded by the government, and everyone on the front lines knows about this since they have the biggest chance in causing this change. Though the problem with this is that it's very hard to prove that it had actually happened without any evidence. Lucius shook his head. Had I not known you, your skill set, and your daughter having a connection with the ancestor, I would never have guessed that you managed to pull off such a feat. You've basically become the founder of this faction without even knowing it. He chuckled. I'll be honest with you, I don't really care if I'm the founder or not since I've got other things to deal with. Since you have this place under control, it's yours. Shiro shrugged. I figured as much. Anyways, do you want me to give you a map on all the pieces that we have discovered so far? Since we're unable to break the seals easily without the Dark Phoenix blood, we decided to make a map of their location first. Lucius asked as Shiro nodded her head. Sure, that would be quite helpful. Hearing her reply, Lucius reached into his inventory and brought out a holographic device of sorts that was shaped like a disc. Placing the disc on the table, a map of their current land appeared with red dots for where the pieces are. In this city, there are strangely 2 other pieces besides the one we're currently excavating now. Whether or not that's due to the fact that this is the tomb or not, I'm not too sure, but the others shouldn't be too hard to reach. Though I do have a few people standing guard, so I'll give you something for them to recognize you. After all, I don't want you to be killing my subordinates now, do I? Lucius chuckled. I suppose not. But do I really look like someone who would just kill people for fun? Shiro raised her eyebrow. No. However, you look like someone who would do much, much worse. Remember what you did to me at the hotel? Lucius forced a smile as Nantion's ears perked up. Emin, what happened? He asked curiously. I loosened his back door a bit. Shiro grinned. Oh my, you poor man. Nantion looked at Lucius with pity as well as surprise. After all, this was a man who survived the Shiro treatment and still wanted to continue business with them. Now that's what he calls courage. Save it. There are more important matters after all. Also, I managed to get some intel on your fight with the kidnapper of thousands of people. I must say, I'm rather surprised to see that your real identity was that of the eldest daughter of the Asakura family. Lucius smiled awkwardly. And that's all you need to know. If you don't mind, I'll be taking my leave. Also, are we able to explore the site a little? Since this place was where we can get an artifact, we might as well do it while we're here. Shiro asked. Yes, of course, but before that, let me give you this. It basically makes you a trusted person with authority just below mine. It should allow you to roam the site without any problems. If there are problems, you're free to give them this Shiro treatment, as long as you don't kill them. Lucius said while placing an enchanted ornament on the table. Are you selling out your people? Shiro smiled. Not quite. I'm just asking you to have mercy on them if they accidentally give you a hard time. Lucius shook his head. You know what? Sure. I'll give them some mercy, but they'll have 2 chances. Piss me off twice and their ass is gone. Okay. Shiro chuckled. That's the best I can ask for. Gesturing for them to leave the office, he sat back and started to type away at his laptop. There was more information about the past, but they needed to be cleaned up and translated first. The most questionable one he found was a carving of what seemed to be a bomb of sorts, which only confused him since there was no way Shiro would have been able to create such a bomb. However, thinking of this, he guessed that perhaps the artifact was something that helped her create this, but that was a little insane. ####. Leaving the room, Shiro immediately walked down the steps with Een and Nantion following behind her. Walking to the entrance of the excavation site without any trouble due to the ornament, Shiro looked up at the statue of Fei Ling and sighed. Patting the base of the statue, she closed her eyes for a moment before making her way inside the tomb. Paying respects for the dead? Nantian asked with a soft smile. A little. She was the one who had taught me my current martial arts. Without this, I would have probably died in a few of the situations that I was in. All of my current martial prowess is based on what she had taught me. Plus, her help was incredible in the trial. Without it, I would have struggled for sure. Shiro replied. I see. Perhaps I should also pay respects since she is your benefactor. Nantian glanced back at the statue. Do it if you want, but you don't need to. I'll do it then. Turning around, Nantian took a moment to pay respect, as well as thanking her for teaching Shiro her martial arts. While this was happening, In did not keep her eyes off one of the walls, which confused Shiro a little. Is there something wrong, In? Shiro asked. I think. I'm not sure if it's bad or not, but I keep on getting this nagging feeling in my mind from deep within this tomb. As if there's something I need to see for myself. In replied with narrowed eyes. Well, we'll see in a second, won't we? If you feel uncomfortable, just tell me, and we'll take a moment to rest up. Shiro nodded her head. After Nantian paid his respects, the trio started to venture deeper into the site. Soon, they bumped into a few members of the faction researching the seal on what seems to be a giant set of locked doors. Showing them the ornament, they allowed Shiro to do whatever she wanted provided that she doesn't break everything. However, Shiro wasn't going to do that, so they didn't need to worry. Walking up to the door, Shiro brushed her finger across the surface and felt a small ripple as it seemed to want to give way the moment she put a little bit of pressure. All right, after I nearly died, I received the Phoenix bloodline, didn't I? So technically, I'm also a Phoenix now. Shiro muttered in her mind. However, as it was not the Dark Phoenix, she wasn't able to actually push open the door despite the lack of resistance from the seal, which was quite strange in Shiro's books. Curious to see if an idea of hers worked or not, Shiro reached into her inventory and pulled out a vial of Yin's blood that she had collected before in order to purify the rebirth pills. Wait, how do you still have my blood in a vial? In asked with confusion. I never used all of it. Shiro shrugged before pouring a drop on the seal. The moment the blood dropped on the seal, a ripple started to grow. From barely noticeable to large waves such, the seal eventually shattered into a faint spray of light. Ah, well, that's good to know. Though we probably could have just had In push it open from the start. Shiro chuckled since she wanted to know this in case they needed other people to recover the artifacts from the other sites. Shrugging off the idle thoughts, she placed her hand on the door and pushed it open as decades of dust started to fall. Waving the dust from her face, Shiro glanced into the tomb despite the shocked faces of the people behind her. Gesturing for In and Nantian to follow, they entered the tomb and the door behind them began to close as the seal was activated once more. Seems like all we need is your blood. If we need other people to help us collect the pieces, I'll just give them one of the vials I have left, and it'll be fine. Shiro chuckled as In raised her eyebrow. Isn't it better for me to be there, though? In asked while tilting her head slightly. True. I won't be doing that unless necessary, of course. Who knows, you might get some important information left behind by your ancestor. Shiro chuckled. Making their way deeper into the tomb, Shiro noticed that the pillars that support the infrastructure of this place had several carvings on the surface which depicted what had happened. Recognizing the carving of a girl holding up an item as herself, she glanced up and saw another carving of the mana pulse bomb that she had created. Thinking back to the bomb, she understood that she could create around 10 mana pulse bombs right now at the weakest power output. If she wanted a high power output, she could probably make one without a problem with her current mana count. However, with such high MP regeneration, that wasn't a problem. What did you even do in the quest? These depictions are rather interesting. Nantian asked with a chuckle. He could see a few carvings that had the earth give way for her along with the armies retreating. Nothing much. I just nuked one of the countries and killed their king in order to make the other countries submit to me. It worked, and I got In out of it. Shiro replied nonchalantly as Nantian suppressed a laugh that had almost slipped out of his lips. You nuked them? He asked curiously. Yeah, they had something called a fabricator. As for why in the hell such an item was even in the past, I have no idea, but it allowed me to make a bomb even though I couldn't use my second class. My links were fried back, then so it'll be impossible for me to make something so destructive. The best I could do was a sword or something. Shiro shrugged. I see. That's certainly one way to protect a kingdom. Since it was in the past, I doubt they had ever seen a bomb of that scale. Nantion nodded. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about your dismissing my place of origin so nonchalantly. Yin's smile twitched a little as Shiro patted her head. Don't worry about it. After all, you're my daughter now, aren't you? I still remember when you were just a tiny bird stealing my C-class mana stones, even though I only had a limited few. Shiro smiled as Ina averted her gaze. You sound just like a kidnapper, haha. I took you from your home, but don't worry about it since I took you as my child. Nantion laughed as Shiro elbowed him in the ribs. Oi, don't slander my name. I technically gave birth to Een since I hatched her egg and even raised her, okay? I never kidnapped anyone. Shiro frowned. Just because you hatched my egg doesn't mean you didn't kidnap me from my nest. Een stuck out her tongue in playfulness. Asterisk Poochie, are you in your rebellious phase? Because I will discipline it out of your system right here and now. Shiro smiled as Een shivered for a moment and glanced towards Nantion for help. Seeing this, Nantion coughed lightly, but Shiro's harsh glare stopped him from saying anything. Understanding that Nantion's never going to be able to help her out against Shiro, Een could only shed a silent tear. Damn, Mom's going to be the dominant one in every relationship. I'm screwed. She thought to herself as she could only hang on Shiro's arm and act cute in order to lessen the punishment. Rolling her eyes, Shiro ignored Yin's cute act and continued deeper into the tomb. Brushing her hand against the wall, Shiro sent out her mana and started to examine the entire tomb as she soon realized that there was only a single path to the end. Raising her eyebrows, she shrugged it off since it just makes things easier. Approaching the end of the hallway, a giant staircase leading down could be seen in front of them as another set of doors was at the bottom. Jumping down the staircase with ease, she pushed open the final set of doors. Once the doors opened, Shiro's eyes widened at the scenery. Soft glowing crystals could be seen gently illuminating the room as a coffin laid in the center of an altar. There were dancing motes of light that seemed to hover around the room along with wind that seemed to be singing an orchestra due to the passages that they rushed through. Looking at the coffin, she noticed two statues kneeling besides it, one of Fei Ling and one of the Void Beast. Despite not interacting with the Void Beast much in the quest, she could tell that it must have been a treasured companion, so she couldn't help but feel a bit guilty at changing the past. Walking up to the altar, Shiro made her way up the staircase and eventually came face to face with the coffin. Looking at the carvings on the side of the coffin, she could recognize it to be a message of some sort, but she didn't recognize the language, which was unfortunate. Placing her hand on the top of the coffin, Shiro wondered if her body was actually placed inside. According to Lucius, she died shortly after pushing back the other countries, so there was a chance of a second Shiro inside this coffin. While she was doing this, Een seemed to be in deep thought as her eyes glossed over for a moment. This didn't escape Nantion's notice, and he made sure to keep an eye on her in case anything bad happened. I see. Een muttered as fire started to flicker from her body. Transforming into her phoenix form, Een flew to the top of the altar and perched herself just behind the coffin. Een. Shiro furrowed her brows in confusion. However, Een didn't respond. Raising her wings, fire started to spread as they were slowly absorbed into the crystals that were illuminating the room. Suddenly, mana surged around them, and a second life force of sorts could be felt. Asterisk Kaijai. A phoenix cry echoed through the room, forcing Shiro to cover her ears. As this was happening, Nantion quickly flickered next to Shiro and created a barrier around them in order to block out the sound. Are you okay? He asked with worry. Yeah, I'm fine. I just don't know what Yin's doing, thought. Shiro replied with a small frown. Looking around the room, she could see pillars of fire slowly erupting from the ground. If I had to guess, that second cry originated from a different phoenix. I suppose what Een is doing is reviving it since I can feel a second life force emerging from in this room. Nantion narrowed his eyes at the gathering fire. Slowly, the fire started to merge into the form of a phoenix. With blue and purple fire being the main body, the majestic beast was twice as big as Een. Asterisk key. Crying out once more, a pair of eyes landed on the trio. Seeing Een, The eyes softened a little before glancing down at the two people. The moment her eyes landed on Shiro, her pupils shrank in shock before it started to water. *KI. Crying out for a third time. The cry was now filled with relief and sadness. Furrowing her brows, Shiro stepped out of the barrier and walked towards the phoenix. For some reason, her mind was telling her that she knew this phoenix, and the only person in mind was Fei Ling. However, she was someone she met in the trial. Could she actually exist now without forming a contract that she did with Lysandra? Pausing for a moment, Shiro looked into the phoenix's eyes and opened her mouth. Fei Ling, she called out. Hearing the name, the phoenix's eyes softened as her form started to shrink. Slowly, the phoenix transformed into a woman with light blue hair, pointed ears, and golden eyes. Looking at the familiar face of her subordinate and friend within the trial, Shiro couldn't help but smile. My liege. Fei Ling bowed as Shiro shook her head. Did you forget about what I asked you to do? Shiro smiled. I asked you to call me liege no more. Call me Shiro, as you are my friend before servant. She placed her hand on Fei Ling's shoulder. With a tear in her eyes, Fei Ling nodded with her head. Shiro, so Fei, what happened after I drove away the Thunder King? I heard that I apparently succumbed to a disease. Shiro asked with a frown. As she was reminded of that horrific day, Fei Ling's face paled as she calmed her mental state. I'm not too sure, but after you won the battle, you went back to the kingdom in order to continue the kingdom. However, during this, you suddenly collapsed and started to cough up blood. You were bleeding from all of your orifices, and the Fire Queen betrayed us after that. Fei Ling shook her head. If that was it, you wouldn't have this kind of reaction. Something else happened, didn't it? Shiro narrowed her eyes since she understood what Fei Ling was like. While they didn't interact for a long time, Shiro knew her well enough to know that she was strong-willed. For her to become pale, it must have been quite a disturbing sight. Indeed. But before I talk about that, I must explain to you the contracts that I had made with the system. Fei Ling shook her head. Contracts? Yes. Have you wondered why your quest changed history and why the ideas you had brought to us are carved into the walls? It was due to the first contract that this was possible. In the first contract, I desired a different end for the good people of the Een Kingdom. I wanted a happy ending, one that did not have them suffer at the hands of the Thunder King. And so, my world became a story quest for you to complete, trapped in a limbo until I chose a desired outcome. However, as time passed, I became depressed from all the attempts I had seen from different adventurers. Some were more occupied with trying to win my heart and bring me to bed, while others gave up due to the fact that they had to face off against 4 countries at the same time. During the quest, my memories were removed in accordance with the system so that the trials were consistent, but after every attempt, I would gain all my memories back, which meant that I knew of everything and my heart sank when no one had managed to achieve a desired outcome for the people. But when my hope reached the lowest, I was informed that a monster with a special circumstance had been granted access to the scenario, and I decided to play the scenario with all my memories. Surprisingly, the system accepted as long as I followed the scenario without any faults. Since I had experienced it over and over again, it was easy for me. I was quite surprised to see that the monster was in actuality a little girl with a charming face, sitting on a throne that was much too big for your body. I watched as you looked around in confusion before a serious disposition washed over your curious nature. You immediately adapted to your surroundings in an instant and started to figure out ways to save this kingdom. Watching you work, I became hopeful of the final results. I complied with everything you had asked of me, even to teach you my martial arts, and you absorbed all of it like a sponge. I was overjoyed. When I saw your preparations for the fated date, I was at ease. Your confidence was apparent, and you seemed to have the entire situation wrapped around your fingertips. Then the first bomb was detonated, and the entire scenario came to a close. You had succeeded in changing the fate of my kingdom for one that I had desired all along. And so, I accepted this outcome as the final result, and history was changed. You became the ruler of the Een Kingdom. However, as you were a part of a different world, the good times came to an end when your presence had to be erased. After you died and the Fire Queen rebelled, things were tough, but not unbearable. I was satisfied enough with the results and knew that I couldn't ask for more. However, one day, large pillars of light ripped open the skies, and incomprehensible beings descended onto our world. With power that could easily shatter continents like your bomb with a single wave of the hand, the world was soon placed under their control. They gathered worshippers from the citizens, and those who did not share their views were branded as heretics and killed on sight. Unless you took another being as your god, you were slaughtered like livestock. Fei Ling sighed in nostalgia while Shiro listened in silence. She could guess that it was potentially the age of demons and gods that she kept hearing things about. During this, I signed a second contract with the system at a price. I gave up the freedom of my world for it to be merged with your current world. At least that way, it wouldn't be destroyed at the hands of the entities that had invaded. However, it also meant that I had given up on the world's survival, as I only had one thing left on my mind. I wanted your world to be safe. You who had granted me my wish and befriended me with honesty, I wanted you to avoid such a fate, Fei Ling said as she held Shiro's hand. By letting our world merge with this one, we supply everything our world has to offer. Mana, monsters, and materials. Everything we had was given to this one so that it could survive. And so, in accordance with the system, the entities were expelled and my world was merged with this world. The citizens had their memories altered and they were spread out across the world. However, due to the price I had to pay for the second contract, I was not given this pardon. This is my final life, and this form you see now is just the final spark. She smiled as tears started to roll down her cheeks. I'm so glad that I can see you one more time before I'm gone for good, Fei Ling said as her voice began to choke up with emotion. Tears started to roll down her cheeks as she hugged Shiro tightly. What do you mean before you're gone for good? Can't phoenixes resurrect themselves? Shiro asked while returning the hug. Her heart sank with a bad feeling as she knew what was happening, but she didn't want to believe it. I told you, Shiro. I paid a price for my world to be merged into yours, and that price was for me to give up my life. However, the system was kind enough for me to leave a descendant, and that's the girl by your side. Fei Ling gestured to Ian. I figured as much. Shiro replied softly and hugged Fei Ling. I don't want to go, especially after finally seeing you one more time. But the system has already held up its side of the bargain. I just hope that my world can assist you in surviving the calamity. Don't worry, it will. Shiro muttered. In the time that you were gone, I had done a lot to prepare for this moment, you know? Since my descendant is passed on to you, I know that they'll need to get stronger, so everything they need has been prepared. The artifact that I left behind is one that will help her evolve. The only reason that I'm appearing before you now is because she woke up my final spark. As with every flicker of fire, it will eventually extinguish. My spark will empower her flame and allow her to grow to new heights that have never been reached before. MB, thank you for appearing in my life. Thank you for saving the people. Thank you for granting my wish, and thank you for being my friend. I wish I could have had more adventurers with you. Fei Ling smiled one more time through her tears as her body started to slowly dim, scattering into flames that seemed to wrap around Ian. Her final expression was one of relief and peacefulness. Standing on her spot, Shiro stayed silent as she bit her lip to stop herself from crying. Lil Tion, Shiro called out softly. Yes. Help Ian with collecting the artifact that should be in this room. I'm going to take a breather, Shiro said as she stepped out of the room. Watching her trembling figure walk out of the room, Nantion wanted to reach out for her, but Ian grabbed his arm and shook her head. Let Mum be by herself for now, Ian said as Nantion nodded his head. Meanwhile, Shiro was walking along the corridor while looking at the carvings. Looking at the carvings of Fei Ling, Shiro's final wall crumbled as she crouched down and tears started to fall. Idiot, why did you need to die on me as well? She muttered as this was the second time a friend had lost their life for her. After crying for a short moment, Shiro calmed herself down and wiped away her tears. Taking a deep breath, she made her way back to the open room and saw Ian sitting down with her eyes closed. Fire would flicker around her as her aura would fluctuate. What's happening? Shiro asked curiously. Emin? Oh, it's just that Yin's refining her flames through the crystals that Fei Ling had left behind. Nantion replied with a smile. Despite seeing the redness around her eyes, he did not bring it up as he knew it would be embarrassing for Shiro. How I see. She did mention that she did some preparations to make sure that Ian could get stronger. Shiro nodded as she started to look around for the artifact piece. However, despite scanning the room for the artifact, She could not find anything. Don't search for it, Mom. The artifact is what empowers me. I've already gotten what I needed from this site. Ian smiled softly as she opened her eyes. Oh, also Ian, how did you know about Fei Ling's final spark? Shiro asked curiously. The system told me. When I entered this room, I had a strange screen appear in front of me saying that there is the presence of the final spark of a phoenix and that I could awaken it by presenting my own flames. Ian replied, I see. Well, since it seems there's nothing else in this place, let us leave. We have other places to be. Shiro nodded and started to walk away. Sensing her mom's strange condition right now, Ian knew that it was due to Fei Ling's death. Let's go then. Mom will probably get over it soon. Ian turned to Nantian as he nodded his head, and the two started to follow Shiro. However, as Nantian was following behind Shiro, he couldn't help but notice a small change in Yin's appearance. Her ears were slightly pointed now, along with the fact that her hair had a slight tint of blue when viewed at an angel. Could it be because of Fei Ling? From the way it's progressing, I'm guessing her hair will eventually turn completely blue and her eyes will become golden, though her face still resembles Shiro's. I suppose it's similar to transferring a flame from an old candle to a new one. Nantian thought to himself with a small shake of his head. As they left the tomb, they were greeted with the presence of quite a few members of Shadow Temple along with Lucius. What happened in there? I heard the cry of a phoenix and the mana around here suddenly spiked. Lucius asked with worry. Don't think about it too much. I was just meeting an old friend. We've already collected the artifact in this place. You can look at the murals, but don't break or disturb anything, Shiro said while walking past Lucius without a second glance. Confused about her sudden change in attitude, Lucius glanced towards Nantian and Ian, who only shook their head and followed behind her. So where are we going now then? Nantian asked. We'll be going to the other spots on this map. There are still 3 more places after this that Lucius hadn't discovered yet. We might get a clue about their location later, Shiro replied. Plus, there are 2 other sites in this city for us to collect from, she said while gesturing to the map. Zooming in into the city, the other 2 sites were located slightly further out and close to the edge of the city. One was to the north while the other was to the west. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to go to the one in the north as it was closer to where the monsters are. She was quite curious about them since they were apparently unique to this city. After knowing that this place was merged from Fei Ling's world, she might be able to find out why it's so different from other places. Red skies that rain blood isn't exactly the most common sight. Leaving the site from the way they came, they started to make their way north. On the way there, she saw a branch of the Adventurers Guild and wondered if she should update her guild ID. After all, she might need it to access a few places in the future, and doing it now would get it out of the way. Do you want to go to the Adventurers Guild for a bit? I need to update my ID, Shiro said with a smile. Sure. We got a bit of time, so a detour or 2 wouldn't hurt. Nantian nodded. Entering the strangely ominous-looking guild hall due to the materials that they had to use, Shiro looked around for what seemed to be a counter, but saw that there were no signs of staff. Emin, where are the staff? Shiro muttered with a frown. Even Nantian found this a little weird as he took his phone out and had a look to see if there were anyone being deployed into this city as a scout. Unfortunately, it seemed like the scout had been injured heavily and they were currently in the process of assigning someone new. TCH, that's a bit annoying. We won't be able to get information from the scout the sect had placed in this city. Nantian furrowed his brows. Let's wait a little then. I'm sure we'll find out something in a bit, Shiro suggested. I want something to eat in the meantime if we're going to wait around, Ian said as she stretched her body slightly. Sorry, I don't have the currency of this place, so we can't order. The best I can do for you is some mana stones. Shiro smiled apologetically. I guess they'll do. I haven't had them in a long time though. Ian sighed and nodded her head. Reaching into her inventory, Shiro rummaged around a little before pulling out the highest level of mana stone that she had. Unfortunately, it was only a B class since she wasn't able to collect any A-class mana stones. Giving Ian the mana stone, the trio sat down by one of the tables near the windows and watched as the confusion in the guild escalated. Since there were no staff in sight, people couldn't turn in their quests nor could they have their business resolved. Small arguments broke out due to a few people being quite impatient while others only watched. Soon, a few members of the staff that worked here appeared and tried to calm the situation down. "We apologize for the current situation, but something unexpected has occurred, so if you don't mind, please be patient while we deal with this." The staff called out, but a few people were still impatient. Watching this happen, Nantion couldn't help but raise his eyebrow in curiosity. "What do you think is happening for the guild to be like this?" He turned to Shiro. "Not sure. I'm looking at the news, but nothing is showing up." Shiro shook her head. If it was going to be something major, she wanted to give the people a hand in resolving it since there were 2 more excavation sites in this city, and they were very important for Ian. "If you want, I can go out and do some investigating of my own to see what's happening," Nantion suggested as Shiro thought about it for a moment. We'll give it a bit more time and see how it goes." She shook her head. As they waited some more, the guild master finally arrived. He was a rather tall man with a well-built physique. He seemed to be someone in his 30s. "I apologize for the confusion, but as you know, something a little unexpected has happened in the city. Far out to the north, outside of the city borders, a strange phenomenon has taken place. The ground is slowly caving in to reveal a ruin of sorts, and the demons are being detected to be flocking to the site from the front lines. We're going to be posting an emergency quest where only level 200 or aboves can apply for due to the unknown nature of this situation. In addition to this, the mana density of this city is slowly dropping and being sucked towards the ruins. Some of you may know that if the mana density is decreased past a certain point, you are no longer able to use the ambient mana to power your spells, making it much more dangerous than it should be. Therefore, the reward to whoever resolves this would be a trip to the National Vault and pick out a treasure of your own choice." The guild master shouted out as a commotion rang out. Hearing what he had said, Shiro narrowed her eyes. Since it might affect the other sites in this city, she might as well have a look at the situation and see what she could do. The sites were important to Ian after all.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.